Welcome back to another live episode, Buttercups, and we're excited to have our regular Sunday show. We're missing Mark Johnson this Sunday, but we are very excited to talk with Roger Plothow. Roger and I have talked actually for a while about discussing the concept of apprenticeships and really learn more about what he's doing in terms of apprenticeships. So I'm doing something a little different this time with topic to discuss. I'm streaming live to LinkedIn because I think there's an opportunity maybe for understanding a little bit of this is kind of a career development episode, maybe. I don't know. We'll see where Roger takes us. Remember to subscribe and really hit the like button. Whenever you hit the like button on YouTube or any of our platforms, it helps us with our algorithms. And so buckle up, Buttercups. It's another episode of Topic Discuss. Roger, how are you?
Hey Gary, you're getting pretty uptown with this intro stuff. That's great stuff.
Thank you. Well, we've upgraded the studio and things I think are working a little bit better. So how have you been?
I've been well. We're counting down the days for our winter escape from the cold and dreary weather in Idaho. So about 11 days, and we're heading to our favorite little beach town in Southern California, and then over to St. George to see our former stomping grounds in your hometown.
And we'll connect up when you're here, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So this is an opportunity to really learn from you, Roger, about really what you do. And so I'm going to turn the time over to you to share what you would like with us. I don't know if you can see on your live stream, you can actually present. If you have some slides or things you want to present, we can let me know and we can do that as well.
Sure, I will see how it goes. I don't necessarily have I object to PowerPoints unless there is an absolute need for them. I don't like doing slides unless there's an absolute need for them, but I'll just sort of wander a bit. I appreciate your asking me to talk about this topic because I think it's a game changer for a lot of people, a lot of young people potentially, and it's vastly misunderstood. It's not particularly a sexy topic until you start to understand what it can do for people and what it actually is. The first thing I want to say, just in the event that my boss eventually sees this, the first thing I want to say is that whatever I say later in this episode, going to college is a good idea. There's no problem with going to college. I love teaching at two colleges. I love the whole aspect of learning, even if what you do in college doesn't lead directly to what you do as a career. What you can learn in college, what you can learn at a university is still always a good thing. I do think that our universities and colleges need to get some things figured out. The cost of university and college has gone up at a much higher rate than inflation over the past 25 to 30 years. I think we have to some degree lost sight of connecting carefully what we learn in university and college to the workplace. There needs to be a better connection between employers and educators, both at the high school level and at the post-secondary level. But college is a good thing. That said, it's not for everybody. And all you have to do is look at the data, Gary. And I did just a tiny bit of research. So the average in the United States of America, among adults 25 years of age and older, the average is 88% of adults 25 and over have a high school degree. 88%. You would think it would be higher, but it's 88%. 1/3, almost exactly, 33%, have an undergraduate degree of some sort, 2 or 4 year degree. So 1/3. And roughly 12%, 13% have a master's degree or higher. So that's
what was the percentage for masters?
13%.
Wow.
Okay. Let's talk about Utah and Idaho, just since a lot of the listeners and viewers are from Utah and Idaho. So Utah does very well in high school graduation. It's 16th in the country in high school graduation rates at 93%, but it's still that 7% of people age 25 and older have not finished high school. Okay. 34%, only slightly higher than the national average, have an undergraduate 2 or 4 year degree. And fewer than the national average, 11%, have a master's degree or higher. Okay, that's Utah. Idaho has a very similar high school graduation rate, 92%. Much lower rate of people who have an undergraduate degree, 29%, and only 10% have a master's degree or higher. Now, I say that not to try to to cast shame or to even pass any judgment. It is what it is. And so 2/3 of people walking around the United States of America have not finished a college degree. I will tell you, I was one of those people. I did not finish my college degree until I was 54 years old. So, but I went into a career that for whatever reason didn't really demand, I was a journalist, and it didn't demand that I had a degree necessarily. And I got lucky. I mean, I worked really hard, and I was pretty good. And so, I was able to carve a career out where I was able to move up very quickly, despite the fact that I didn't have a degree. But as I got older, I realized I want to have options. As I looked at, among other things, journalism, the newspaper business was in deep trouble, and I didn't have the solutions, and I wasn't having as much fun as I was early in my career. I don't like laying people off. I don't like managing decline, and that's what I was doing. So I finished off my undergraduate degree, and I finished at Southern New Hampshire University, which is has been around for a long time. It has a beautiful campus in Manchester, New Hampshire, but it has become famous for kind of perfecting the online degree environment. Yeah. They're very good. And I finished off my degree in about a year, got a 4.0 in my final year at Southern New Hampshire. And then as I began considering what else I wanted to do, I decided I wanted to get my master's degree because I wanted the option of teaching in a college. And so I went back, but I went to Gonzaga. I actually looked at 3 or 4 universities. I looked at Arizona State, which has a great online program. I was accepted at a couple of places, including Gonzaga. And I went there because Gonzaga had a master's degree in communication and leadership studies, one of the few places I could find that combined those two things. And I loved it. I took, 13 courses. Out of those 13 courses, I loved 11. That's a great percentage. And so I got my master's degree, and the same day that I defended my thesis for my master's degree. My thesis was on online learning pedagogy. I defended my thesis, and that afternoon I was fired from my job in journalism. And I'll just rip through this quickly, but I was the vice president, editor, and publisher of the Post Register newspaper here in Idaho Falls, and over the years we had bought 3 other weekly papers in the area that I had overseen. But in 2015, thereabouts, the family that owned the paper sold it to a company out of Minnesota, and I knew right away. In fact, I had dinner with the president of the company, and I knew right away that this was going to probably not go well.
And why is that?
Well,
happened
because
at
I
dinner?
knew that they were going to demand a higher rate of return. They were going to demand higher profits on less revenue. That's what companies do. And eventually they I had started as a publisher. I had created a side business, not a side business, but part of the newspaper business. I had started doing these conferences, these policy-based conferences in Wyoming and Idaho, and I loved it. And they were starting to catch on. I did a healthcare summit. We did a number of we did cybersecurity. We did a great toward the end of the process. We did a thing called Women of Influence, that both in Wyoming and Idaho. Those are still going, but they weren't making a ton of money. And as it happens, I was let go in December of 2019, and by March of 2020, COVID hit, and conferences were dead for 2 years. So within a couple of weeks, I was hired to be an adjunct professor or instructor at College of Eastern Idaho, but I didn't have a day job for quite a while. I interviewed for 2 positions at the Idaho National Laboratory. I didn't get either one. I was runner-up for both, and I probably, looking back, it was a good thing for all concerned. And I was at the interview stage for a full-time teaching position at a community college in Washington State. I was then hired as an adjunct professor at Gonzaga to teach their graduate course in media literacy. And then kind of right about that same time that I was preparing to interview for this position in Washington State, I heard through the grapevine, through friends of mine, about an organization that I knew of called Idaho Business for Education that had been started by a couple of people I have known for a long time in the state of Idaho, Park Price here in Idaho Falls, and some folks in Boise that I've known, very high-powered, very, very smart people. And they had just won. That had been around since about 2007, but they had just won a U.S. Department of Labor grant to support and establish and grow youth apprenticeship in Idaho. And the position I heard about was their marketing person. And when I inquired, they said, "Oh, we got this position, which is business development and program manager. That's the one you really would fit better." And thank God, because the woman they brought on to be the marketing director is way better than I would have been. And the business development and program manager position, it was exactly right. And so that's what I do during the day. Is I worked with this inside this grant. Our grant is fully funded by the U.S. Department of Labor for registered apprenticeship. So before I go,
what does youth mean? What does that mean? A certain age?
Yeah, youth in this case means 16 to 24. So, and I will mention to you, Gary, if I start getting out ahead of myself or out over my skis where I'm blathering on about and I've lost you, that means I've lost other people to stop me and say, wait, what did you just say?
Will do.
When I present on this to the Chamber of Commerce or the Rotary Club or whatever, I always say to them, I'm going to talk for about 5 to 8 minutes, and then I'm going to stop and just let you ask me questions, because I know it gets it's a lot. I mean, it's a fire hose. Among other things, when you hear the word apprenticeship, you sort of think of internship, and you think of, and these are utterly different things. And so to start with, I want to explain what apprenticeship is within this world, in the U.S. Department of Labor world.
Because apprenticeship could also, for me, it harkens back to a different time too. Like, a blacksmith needs an apprentice, and I mean, it is ignorant to say that, but that's kind of the.
No, it's not ignorant at all, because that's what we think of when we think of apprenticeship. So I'm gonna. Why did I bring up the Jedi as the name of this conversation? Because Anakin Skywalker, you'll remember, who became, I don't know if everybody knows this, but he became Darth Vader. So
that was shocking. That was shocking.
It was shocking
too.
But he was an apprentice, a Jedi apprentice, but he kind of lost his way and didn't quite finish. And you'll remember Luke Skywalker was apprenticing with Yoda, and at some point Luke says, "I gotta go. I can't. I've got to go save. Whatever I got to save." And Yoda says, "Oh boy, he's not done yet. He's not ready." And so that was when we think of apprenticeship, we think of, and we think of the blacksmith and it goes back centuries, long time. Leonardo da Vinci was an apprentice at one time.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he learned a lot of what he ended up doing. Of course, then he surpassed his mentors by leaps and bounds. But so the registered apprenticeship program in the United States began in 1937, essentially as part of the New Deal, and a part of an attempt to bring more well-trained people into the workforce. Back in those days, the number of people who went to college was 5, 6, 8%. It was minuscule. And so the U.S. Department of Labor.
It was a federal. Okay, yeah.
It's a federal program. So it's basically, took the informal apprenticeship that we know about, and turned it into a more formalized, specific kind of thing. In which, when you're done with it, you get a certificate from the U.S. Department of Labor that says, I have finished this level of competency, this skill. And an apprenticeship can go anywhere from 1 to 4 years, typically, in on-the-job training. So it can be anywhere from 2,000 hours to 8,000 hours of on-the-job training. A very high-end welding apprenticeship is an 8,000-hour, 4-year apprenticeship. When you're done, you're going to make a whole bunches of money, because the demand for welders is only going up. But we also have, just by way of sort of setting the stage, the largest credit union in the state of Idaho has an apprenticeship for member service specialists. It involves being a teller and assisting members in starting an account. And these are high school students. And it's a 1-year apprenticeship. You go through the process. You put in the 2,000 hours during your senior year or junior and senior year of high school, and you become a journey worker, the non-gender pronoun, as a member services specialist. We have apprenticeships in auto technician. We have apprenticeships in IT. The Boys and Girls Clubs have a number of registered apprenticeships in the state of Idaho. The more and more school districts are beginning to get interested in apprenticeship, because they can't find substitute teachers. They can't find teachers' aides. So they can bring in a 16 or 17-year-old junior or senior in high school and not only teach them about how to become a teacher's aide, but they can hire them. One of the key fundamental requirements for an apprenticeship is it comes with a job. You are an employee. It's not like an intern where you go in for 3 months, you might get paid, you might not get paid. You have to be an employee, you have to get paid. Otherwise, the sponsor, the employer sponsor, can't be a registered apprentice sponsor. That's a requirement of the U.S. Department of Labor. Not only that, but you have to have at least one bump in pay over the course of the apprenticeship, and most will have more than that. So when you think about, and yes, can it be concrete worker? Absolutely. Can it, is it in the trades? Still, it's more traditionally in the trades. But if you can create an occupation, you can build an apprenticeship inside that occupation.
So
Go ahead.
like you said, the bank, for example, participates, a bank would, for their customer service reps. How does a bank or a private institution get involved or participate really to bring on registered apprentices?
So I have said this before in making presentations. One of the secrets to good public speaking is to salt the audience with people to ask you the right questions at the right time. So that's what just happened here. Is I didn't really ask you to ask me that question, but it's the right time and the right question. So that's what I do. Is the majority of my time is spent reaching out to potential employer sponsors and helping them understand what apprenticeship is, helping them learn enough about it to decide whether it makes sense for their company, and then working with them to bring them to a certain point, at which point we connect them to the Idaho Department of Labor, which also has people working inside a U.S. Department of Labor grant to take them across the finish line. We then submit that to a U.S. Department of Labor apprenticeship director here in the state of Idaho, who reviews it, makes sure that it fits all of the requirements, and then he provides them with the approval to become a registered apprentice. Then I come back in and work with the employer to help them find young people to become apprentices inside their program, to prepare young people for preparing for interviews, and how to dress for an interview, and preparing a resume and that sort of thing. So we get involved in the recruiting process. I stay very close to the high school career counselors throughout. My focus is on Eastern Idaho, so basically the third of the state that is sort of as we say in Idaho. Well, not all of us say it, but I do. Idaho has 3 state capitals: Salt Lake City, Boise, and Spokane. Well, so I'm in the part of Idaho where the state capital is Salt Lake City, just an extension sort of I-15.
So the federal funding, if it gets approved, what does that funding actually fund? Is it part of the salary of the apprentice, or does it go to the company, or
goes
how
to
does
me?
that work?
It pays for people like me. We have 6.5, 7 people on our team, and it basically pays for us. So, and it does also pay. I mean, once we can reimburse apprentices for certain kinds of expenses. So it's not a lot of money, but up to $750 a year. They can get reimbursement for clothing or mileage, to get to and from work, or if they need tools, that sort of thing. And we can connect the employer with programs that might help them get full reimbursement for the training. I'm going to talk about the elements of apprenticeship here in a minute, and what we call related technical instruction is one of the elements of apprenticeship. We can help employers. We don't have that money, but we can connect them to the Workforce Development Council in the state of Idaho that can help them get reimbursement for certain kinds of expenses. And it can be a lot. I mean, we're working right now with College of Eastern Idaho to help them bring in new welding equipment and pay for instructors for a vastly enlarged program in welding. Lewis and Clark up in Lewiston just got about $1 million to expand their welding program. So there are, but most of the funding, our funding is about $2.5 million, and it's mostly to pay for the people for over 4 years' time to do the work that we're doing. And we are paid enormous, unbelievable salaries to do this work. It is shocking how much.
Which you, and I didn't realize this, you didn't start until 2019 doing this.
I actually hooked up, my first week on the job was 2020, October of 2020.
Okay. Because when we first started doing episodes together on Topic Discuss, it just sounds like, I mean, journalism is you are a recovering journalist, I think you've said, but the way that you understand apprenticeship and kind of are passionate about it, I thought you had done it for a really long time, but it's pretty new for you.
I was fairly familiar with it because when I was CEO, we had unions inside our operation, so I understood the apprenticeship program, and I understood how it worked, and I understood what it could do. We would often, so we had a press union that was part of the AFL-CIO. And the press would run the copies of the paper and would feed into a separate room that we called where basically it's where the paper was put together. So the paper would be run in various sections, and sometimes we would have what we would call a pre-run. It would be a run that would, prior to deadline, that would be put in and stacked, and then we'd have the live run, and then we would have, this would all feed into a very sophisticated bunch of machinery that would put it all together. But you had to have people operating that. Well, that's sort of an entry-level position, but we would look for people in those positions that might make good press workers. And so 3 or 4 or 5 times over the course of, I don't know, 10 years or so, we brought people from there and made them apprentices inside our press room. And the press, back in the day, the press jobs were pretty well paid, good work, and, highly skilled stuff. Presses are, slowly, the building I built to house a new press and new packaging operation is now a warehouse for a local cosmetics manufacturer. There are the nearest press for newspapers in the state of Idaho is in Preston.
So when you are working with an employer and you're connecting these potential apprentices up with the employer, how do you connect with those apprentices and help? I mean, I assume you're helping mentor them in a direction that will help them with their own career and interests, or how does that work?
So I use this term, and my team has asked me to not use it anymore. So if any of my team members are watching this now or later, sorry. But basically, we provide the connective tissue between a number of different pieces of apprenticeship. So we work very closely with the career and technical education programs inside the high schools because our focus is youth apprenticeship. So we are in constant contact with the career counselors and the educators in all of the high school programs across the state of Idaho. I focus obviously on Eastern Idaho, but so that's the fuel that where we want to bring those young people into the apprenticeship programs. But you can't place an apprentice if you don't have an employer who is a registered apprenticeship sponsor. And so I spend a vast majority of my time working on bringing sponsors up on board. Once a sponsor is on board, finding apprentices to take those positions, assuming that it's been built right and that the pay level is appropriate, finding people to fill those positions is not the problem. The challenge is bringing on sponsors, we need another 150 sponsors in the state of Idaho. We don't, we need dozens and dozens and dozens to sign up. And so does Utah, and so does every other state for that matter. We need, and I'll talk about a little bit why they would even think about that here in a moment.
Well, we've got some questions coming through. Is apprenticeship more focused on technical skills, or are we seeing this in IT programming as well?
Boise State is on the verge of launching, I should say, probably this week. We'll be launching its IT apprenticeship program, in which they are both the provider of training and the sponsor of the apprenticeship. So I am working closely with the Idaho National Lab on a cybersecurity apprenticeship. So there are, you all know, you've all heard of CompTIA and other kinds of organizations that are focused on IT and cyber. They have created a pathway of apprenticeship programs that all you have to do is bring them in. So anything, if you want to become a lounge singer, we can find, if I can find a sponsor, we can build an apprenticeship for a lounge singer. If you want to be, but the key is you got to find the sponsor. More traditionally, they are in the trades, but that is really changing. And it's particularly changing as the demand for some very specific kinds of skills, a high level of skills, not just, 90 days worth of training and off you go. That doesn't cut it anymore. But with an apprenticeship, so let's talk about IT for a minute. If you have the basic ability and understanding of computer programming, basic, if you know some basic hardware and software skills related to the computer world, if you understand a little bit how the internet works, if you understand that kind of thing, there are apprenticeships in IT that pay you from day one. So you could go to, a university or a college and take out a, do a 2 or 4 year degree in IT or cyber, which is wonderful. Have I mentioned that? It's a wonderful thing to go to college.
Yeah.
But you can also look at combining that or going into an apprenticeship program that pays you from day one and is teaching you very specific skills and competencies that are focused on IT.
So another question that's out there is, what about many of our students post-pandemic have ended up in some kind of a hybrid learning program that's online. So they might be in high school, but all of their schoolwork is done from home through an online program. So, I think there's a question about how do students like that get connected if they're not in a high school.
Have I mentioned that one of the secrets to public speaking is to salt your audience with people who will ask you the right questions? Okay, yes. So I'm going to talk about the 3 elements of apprenticeship here. So you have obviously you've got the apprentice, him or herself, the young person who's going to, you have to, that person is going to be employed with the sponsor. So there has to be a wage as part of the apprenticeship from day one. There is on-the-job training that comes with it. That is part of an apprenticeship. And so you're assigned a mentor. That's part of the agreement that the sponsor has made, is they will provide the on-the-job training. They will provide you with a mentor. They will track your progress and report it. The third element is related technical instruction. And that can be whatever the employer says it's going to be. It needs to be a minimum of 144 hours for every 2,000 hours of on-the-job training. That means, when I say 144 hours, that means that's not just the time in class, but the time spent doing homework and all the things that go with a a class. It can be online classes. It can be face-to-face classes. It can be whatever the employer says it is. I often will say to employers, part of your related technical instruction ought to be making your apprentices take my class in oral communication, because that is a skill that everybody needs to have. So if they wanted to, they could say, yeah, you've got to take this, and we can set it up. They can set it up however they want, to where they work with the college to set up a non-credit option, or they can choose online options that are out there galore. That's one of the things about CompTIA and IT, is they have a lot of online training options and so the other thing that's happened, Gary, with COVID and this disruption of education is that, and this is really important, Idaho tracks what it calls the go-on rate, which is the percentage of young people who, by the time they are 18 and they have finished the period of time when they should have completed high school, what percentage of those people within that go immediately on to some kind of post-secondary training or education? And 3 or 4 years ago, that percentage was around 50%, about half. Were going on to some kind of, whether it was military or community college or a 1-year certificate program or a 4-year university. It was about 50%. Two things have happened since then. One, COVID has disrupted education across the board. The other thing is that the demographics of the labor force have started to really change, and COVID caused part of this because baby boomers like me are quitting. We've had enough. We're leaving, and that's leaving all these openings for positions with nobody to come in and take them. And so we have, this basically zero unemployment. And the problem is that employers can't find workers. And so a lot of high school age people are just going right into the workforce because you can get $18 an hour at McDonald's or whatever. And so you think, well, that's going to be great. I'll just go do that. What they're going to find out is you probably don't want to do that for the rest of your life. And it's sort of a short-term answer. But the go-on rate in the state of Idaho has gone from around 50% to 37%. Just came out this last week, 37%. And we know that by the time people in Idaho are 25, about a third of them, or less than a third, are getting some kind of a 2 or 4 year degree. So we are in a bit of a crisis. We have thousands and thousands of open positions, many of which are great careers: cybersecurity, banking, teaching. Teachers are quitting in droves, and there's no one coming in, backfilling there. And not everybody who wants to take up one of those careers either is suited for or wants to go to a traditional 4-year program. And
right, or can afford it, right?
Or, one of the things we just know, and have I mentioned I love college, I love universities.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we just know is that a lot of young people are coming out of college with a degree and $100,000 in debt that they can't pay.
Well, and I think also going through an apprenticeship program for a young person doesn't mean that they won't go on to other education. In fact,
they can do it simultaneously. They can stack their traditional education with an apprenticeship. They can do it the other way. They can do the apprenticeship first. They can do the education later. You're not precluding any alternatives here. But
yeah, I think with I've done a couple of podcast episodes on deglobalization. I don't know, I'm not an expert on geopolitics, but we are seeing some deglobalization happening, whether we like that or not. And we also are seeing the baby boomer generation, like you said, going into retirement. And also, no offense to the baby boomers that are out there, but over a 20-year period, we will see them also dying, right? So it's a large depopulation event is on its way. And so labor and labor shortage is really kind of I don't know if you'd say it's a crisis, but it's a serious issue facing companies
It's built
right
in. It's
now.
built into our demographics. The only thing that has happened is COVID accelerated it a bit
Yeah, I agree.
because a
COVID
lot
did.
of people, a lot of boomers just said, "Okay, I'm not going to go into the office and deal with that stuff anymore. I don't need it. I don't want it. I've got enough dough to go on and just leave it alone." So they're out, and they would have been out in the next 5 years, probably anyway. But the COVID did accelerate it.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, I think that many companies would really, do well taking advantage or being part of the apprenticeship programs. Do you foresee future Department of Labor expansion of apprenticeship programs across the country?
Yeah, the Biden administration has made it very clear that it's a very high priority among the within its Department of Labor. Even before that, the Trump administration was big on apprenticeship. I think we are
So
all
it's
recognizing.
bipartisan.
Yeah, I think everybody gets it. It's not there's no political animal here to divide up. It makes sense from any angle you look at it. I mean, I know you're a China watcher, and one of the areas where China is now suffering. So I was a China watcher going back from before you were born. And of course, they started the one child program back in the day because they couldn't feed their people, and they were desperate to figure out how do we stop this so we can feed our people. Well, now they've got a problem. It works so well that they don't have anyone coming up through the ranks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have a similar situation to a lesser degree. The baby boom is called the baby boom for a reason. From 46 to 64, after the war, everybody had babies and the economy was booming and everything was, and so, but it hasn't maintained.
Well, and
So
the smallest generation comes right after the baby boomers. My generation, Generation X, is this narrow neck, right? And so we really just don't have the kind of workforce that we think we have. And also I think that part of the reason this is important to understand is it's the element of variability and diversity. So as a company, you do want to have multiple sources of labor that you can work with. So yes, college graduates and apprenticeships, internships. One thing, I had a question that came through. You talked about this earlier, but I just want, maybe you could reiterate it. So a company that wants to work with or sponsor an apprenticeship would be working with someone like you. But how is that different for them than working with a university on an internship, like with engineering or nursing or something like that?
Or a co-op. The co-op
Right.
is another alternative for that. It's vastly different, and I'll explain why. So when you create an apprenticeship program, the sponsor, the employer, is in full control of it. They decide what it's going, but you still have to meet certain minimum criteria established by the U.S. Department of Labor. And so you can't just say anything that we say it is going to be a registered apprenticeship. An internship is whatever, just whatever you say it is. And, free internships are sort of crappy. I mean, they're fine, but it's free labor for the employer to a certain degree. And I think those are going to go away. I think there's a great value in a summer internship that's paid, that gives you significant responsibility. I think there's all sorts of reasons to do that. Co-ops are fine. Apprenticeship, though, is a very specific kind of program that must incorporate wages, it must incorporate on-the-job training, and it must incorporate related technical instruction that can be provided by the local university or community college or whatever you choose. When you're when you are recruiting for an apprentice, one, you can start recruiting as young as 16 for 16-year-old young people in high school, and the U.S. Department of Labor will give you a waiver if you're in a position where generally they would not allow under 16-year-olds to work in that environment. The U.S. Department of Labor gives you a waiver if you're a registered apprenticeship sponsor. So that's one piece of it. You can sit down with that when you're recruiting that apprentice. You can say, "Here's our program. It may look very similar to what you're already doing in many respects, but here's our registered apprenticeship program. Here's what it looks like. Here's what you're going to learn. Here's the minimum you're going to get paid through that period of time. And when you're done, you're going to get this awesome certificate from the U.S. Department of Labor that is widely recognized in all 50 states as, in many ways, the equivalent of a college diploma." And so it takes it to the next step. It's a much higher level, and you have people like me who are going to be there to help you develop and maintain and sustain the program as you go through it, which we wouldn't be in a position to do if you were basically doing it on your own. I am required to work only with programs that are being established through the U.S. Department of Labor as a registered apprenticeship program. Anyone who wants to do something else, great, but I can't help you. So there are a lot of really good reasons to do it. It's not that hard. I mean, the process of getting one built, we've turned them around in less than 2 weeks in some cases. In some cases, it's taken a year because it just the attention span and just getting it done. But those are, and the other thing I would say is to an employer, and you alluded to this, Gary, the whole traditional approach of recruiting at the universities. You go to one place, you put your ad out on Indeed or wherever you're going to put it out, and you just sort of wait for people to come to you. That is no longer going to work. It probably hasn't worked for some time, but going forward, it's not going to work. If you're going to be a competitive employer and you're going to find the best talent, you need to have multiple pathways in your workforce development plan, and apprenticeship needs to be one of them. It's not going to be the only one. That would never make any sense, but it needs to be one of the ways that you are developing your own workforce, or you're going to be left behind and you're not going to be competitive in the labor force, in the labor market.
So one question that an audience member asked is, how many apprentices do you work with, or how many, I don't know if you're allowed to talk about that, but how many people are you helping coordinate with? Okay,
so remember, I started with this October of 2020. Our grant started August 1st of 2020. So we're about a year and a half, a little more than a year and a half into this. And I sound really smart right now because I know all this stuff. A year ago, I knew nothing about this. I was at sea. And so it takes a while just to learn what it is and what works and what doesn't. Also, COVID has disrupted our program. There are healthcare providers who would be all over apprenticeship if they could just, cut loose some time to focus on it. But you know what it's like. I mean, you know better than anybody what's going on out there. So we have established 21 registered apprenticeship programs in the state of Idaho since we launched, and we now have 52 apprentices that have been brought on board into those programs. Our goal is much higher than that, but we're on track to meet our 4-year targets. And one of the reasons is that is that you gotta want to do it, and you have to catch the vision, and you have to go through the steps that are required to get into a registered apprenticeship program. I have right now 1, 2, 3 in Eastern Idaho. I have 3 openings for apprentices, but I have a company that wants to bring on 20 new welding apprentices between now and May. And so we're working with them to do and that's who we're working with to establish through College of Eastern Idaho a greatly expanded training program in which they would get new equipment and funding through the Workforce Development Council to let them do that.
So you said earlier, just welding as an example, that a welding apprenticeship could be a 4-year apprenticeship, right? And then you said, I think once they finish, they'll be making much more money than they would at $18 an hour or whatever at McDonald's. Do you have a sense of those wages ranges?
I can tell you that a graduating, a senior in his or her second semester of high school could start as a welding apprentice right now for $15-16 an hour, but they're going to start getting trained. So if you're making $16 an hour at McDonald's, you're probably going to make $16 an hour for quite a long time. If you're making $16 an hour as a welding apprentice, you're going to go from 16 to 18 to 20, and you're going to be making more money as you go through. You're going to be earning a living as you go through. And when you're done with that 4-year program, you could be making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. There are welders right now making $100,000 a year. So that is a livable wage. That's good money, and it's good work, and it's not going to go away. So that's the key and why apprenticeship, I think, is potentially a game changer, because when you're done with the apprentice program, you have no debt. You have no debt, unless you've chosen to buy a house in the meantime, or you bought the new SUV or whatever it is that you've decided to do with the money you're making, but you have no debt to a university or college to pay off. That's
and the
cool.
Skill is not something, no one can ever take that skill away from you either. If you've done 4 years of an apprenticeship in welding, that's a skill that you'll always have, that's always marketable, that you can build on from there.
You can take it anywhere. You can, and now I want to go I want to go move to Phoenix. Okay.
Yeah.
Take your certificate and your skill and go to Phoenix, and you're going to be welding in warmer weather. Good for you.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yep.
Yeah, that's why I believe so much in apprenticeship, because a lot of my students at CEI, a lot of them are good students, and they're going to be fine, and they're going to sail through my class, and they're going to learn what they're going to learn, and they're going to be fine. There are those who are not students, who just aren't going to be good students, because it's not their thing. And learning to be a public speaker or take a public speaking course is terrifying for a lot of people. So I see on a regular basis those students who are trying to get through it, and some of them are going to get there and some of them aren't. And they need to know that there are options out there for them, that they can make a living in a variety of ways. And employers have got to start embracing this idea that there are more ways to go about developing workforce than they have appreciated in the past, and they better hurry. Yeah. They better hurry.
Yeah. Do you think that one of the apprentices that you've worked with would be willing to come on the show?
I am all but certain that, and when you talk to these, not only that, I think that one of the sponsors that I've worked with would also be interested in talking about their experience. So,
we can set that up.
Yeah, I'll work on that.
And one thing, just so you know, we can set it up where we're bringing in multiple people into our show. So if there are a few students and a sponsor, whatever people are willing to do, I think we have some in our audience that would like to kind of hear from those who are experiencing this program what it's like for them.
I think that's what they really need to hear. You've heard enough from me. I've told you everything I can tell you, but to hear it from people who are really involved in it is a whole different thing. I absolutely be happy to get that set up.
So as we kind of wrap up the show, is there anything else you would want our audience to know about with apprenticeships, or anything that we've missed?
So, yes, a couple of things. One, Idaho has a registered apprenticeship program. Utah has a registered apprenticeship program. Every state has a registered apprenticeship program. Every state has people committed to doing this work. It's structured a little differently in every state, which is fine. Some programs are state programs that are approved by the U.S. Department of Labor to sort of operate separately. Some are connected, like Idaho, directly to the U.S. Department of Labor. So every state has it. Utah has it. Some states we're just really in the kind of the early stages here in Idaho. We're just kind of getting our feet under us. If there is anyone who is an employer who stumbles across this episode, or knows an employer, or works for an employer, or goes shopping with an employer who is experiencing difficulty in the labor market, which is all of them, call me. I don't, and even if you're not in Idaho, we'll connect you. We'll get you connected to the right people in your state. But I think you need to at least invest 30 minutes to an hour to learn about apprenticeship on a one-on-one basis and get your questions answered. And if you think it doesn't work for you, I've had a few conversations with employers, and they, at the end of it, I said, this probably isn't quite like an example. Is there are employers in healthcare who are limited in what they can pay to a certain degree based on Medicare repayments and such things. I can't fix that for them. That's a whole other issue that we're going to have to figure that out. And in Idaho, the issue is Medicaid, the Medicaid reimbursement, that it's going to have to get fixed. But there's nothing to lose by taking 30 to 45 minutes and learning about this to see if it makes any sense for you.
So, Roger, you think if you could email me contacts, maybe a link to his website, I could put in the show notes so people would know how to contact you or learn more about it from the Department of Labor? I'll include all of that in the show notes.
Yep, I'll send you a list of links and my email address. And as I said, if you're not in Idaho, that's okay. I'll connect you to the right. We're working with national nonprofits and the National Department of Labor all the time, and sharing information and sharing resources. So
yeah, because it really is a federal program, right? That's distributed through the states.
Yep.
Very good. Well, I've been looking forward to this topic for a while, and I hope that it leads to a few more. I'd love to talk to some students and to some sponsors. But Roger, you've been such an incredible asset to this podcast and to our show, and I always appreciate your willingness to take time with me. So thank you for taking time again today.
Well, Gary, you're doing the Lord's work. This is important stuff. The conversations are, I don't even, I've said this before. I don't even care how many people. I mean, if you had 1 million people, that'd be great. But you're talking about important things, and it's fun to, it kind of keeps me going. So I appreciate your willingness to put up with me, and I'll work on arranging a time when we can talk to an apprentice and a sponsor and get that perspective.
So just for those that are watching as we end the show, or that are listening, we typically have not streamed to LinkedIn. I've not connected to LinkedIn as much or at all with Topic Discuss, and part of the reason for that is just I think that, well, I don't really know why I haven't done that, but we did it today. And so for those that are watching from LinkedIn, just please know that we have a regular show every Sunday night at 4 p.m. Mountain Time, 3 p.m. Pacific Time, and our main platform is YouTube. Though we do stream to Twitter, to LinkedIn, to YouTube, and to Facebook. And so again, thank you everybody for taking time with us, and a special thank you to Roger Plothow. We'll see you next week.
Great. Thanks, everybody.